Beginning in 1929 and dragging on throughout the 1930s, the Great Depression marked a significant devastation to America and the rest of the world. The Great Depression proved to be a struggle both economically and psychologically, forever changing the lives of the American people. These hard times began with the staggering amount of bank and business failures, and, as a result, thousands lost their jobs. Between 1921 and 1929, annual average unemployment had never risen above 3.7%. But then, the Depression hit, and the rate shot up. By 1933, it had climbed to a shocking 24.9%. As if the high unemployment rate and overall economic crisis weren't enough, Mother Nature ravaged the Midwest in the forms of drought and the Dust Bowl. In one of his many fireside chats, President Franklin D. Roosevelt described his visit to the broken land. "I talked to families that had lost their wheat crop, lost their livestock, lost the water in their well, lost their garden, and come through to the end of the summer without $1 of cash resources, facing the winter without feed or food. Just like those unemployed in the cities, farmers and their families were struggling to carry on, left with practically nothing. Thus, unable to support their families, countless men battled to cope. Men's self-image took a beating during the Great Depression. In many cases, men arrived at work to find the doors locked, with little or no explanation. Some families were able to make ends meet by having the wife and children work, a situation that could be humiliating for the husband and father. Jobless and left to depend on their family for income, it was a horrible time for the average American man. The feelings of betrayal, despair, and maybe even worthlessness that men were experiencing are very well expressed in lyricist E.Y. Yip Harburg and composer Jay Gorney's 1932 song, "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime?" He sings, "They used to tell me I was building a dream, with peace and glory ahead. Why should I be standing in line, just waiting for bread?" Men of the time felt as if their hopes for that spectacular American dream were lost, since they had fallen so low they waited in lines for some measly bread. Wives and children could see the toll the Great Depression was taking on their husbands and fathers, causing them to grow concerned for the sanity of their men. John Steinbeck illustrates this troubling ordeal in his novel The Grapes of Wrath, in which he writes, "The women studied the men's faces secretly, for the corn could go, as long as something else remained." Resembling Steinbeck's words, women and children couldn't care less about the corn crop or anything else. As long as the man of the household remained intact, all could not be lost. Still, the Great Depression had a heavy emotional impact on numerous individuals. Even among those fortunate or wealthy enough to avoid economic disruption, the Great Depression took a psychological toll. According to historian Harvey Green, psychiatrist offices were packed in the early 1930s, with those from the upper classes attempting to cope with the economic mayhem. Evidently, the Great Depression affected the life of each and every American in one way or another. Unfortunately for some, the devastating economic and psychological damage was too much to handle. Suicide became a part of everyday conversation, particularly as the stories of bankrupt Wall Street traders jumping from tall office buildings entered the public mindset. However, the national suicide rate did increase in late 1929 and continued to increase until 1933, from 13.9 per 100,000 to an all-time high of 17.4 per 100,000. These tragic facts reveal just how tough life was during the time of the Great Depression. Both good and bad, the Great Depression clearly made a lasting impact on society. The day-to-day struggle will not soon be forgotten, but neither will the initiatives taken by President Roosevelt to fix the problems. A coalition crafted by Roosevelt insisted that Social Security, farm commodity price supports, and the regulation of banking, securities, wages, and working hours remained essential duties of the national government. Programs such as Social Security remain in effect to this day, a perfect example of how a method of recovery made at the time pursues in the present. The Great Depression will always be remembered as a time of great hardship. However, forced to deal with the problems, America came up with some creative ways to deal with their suffering. The results of this creativity resound in society today and will continue on in the future.